part 4, why, how can I know the Bible is true? The answer I want to offer is that covenantal fulfillment is the completion. The completion of covenantal fulfillment is the Bible's meta-narrative. And I want to just start by talking about this. All human beings need narrative. You just need story. If you talk about your life and the meaning of your life, you're going to start telling stories. And there's a beginning, middle, and end to your story, or at least up to the current time being. And so narrative is absolutely fundamental to all human meaning, right? Otherwise your life and mine, as well as the history of whole cultures and civilizations, and I forget, this is a quote of somebody, is just one damn thing after another. I said it in my Easter sermon, your life is just short and pointless. It's just a series of pointless events, okay? In a pointless circumstance, in a pointless culture. Culture is pointless, right? Unless there's a grand story, a grand narrative arc. And last week, I said that one of the case I want to make for the Bible is the Bible gives you a good meta-narrative. And that contrasts to all the other religious worldviews and holy books, because they tend to have, like futile stories, like even the passage you looked at before, there's a futility in thinking in Romans chapter 2, right? And so just think about that over the course of a whole culture. But the Bible has a grand linear meta-narrative, not circular and not one toward futility. And here it is. Let me say it. The Bible's grand story is creation, fall, redemption, and resurrection, or some people call it recreation. And that is a really compelling story by which to live our lives inside of this grander story. And I want to get to an important feature inside the Bible that most people don't understand, and that is covenant. Covenant is the way God, who is almighty and transcendent, infinitely above us. So in a previous video, I said, how can an ant have a personal relationship with a human being? We're so at such a much higher plane of existence and reality, our powers and our abilities. But it's an even bigger problem with God than ant to human being. And the way God solved this problem is covenant. God came with covenant. He is almighty and transcendent, infinitely above us, but it enables him to have a relationship which can invite us into an intimate closeness to him like partners and children, or as the Bible might put, face to face. Or, like a husband to a bride. That's how the way the Bible describes, God's relationship to his people. Bridegroom and bride. And that's how the Bible opens in a marriage and the Bible closes in a marriage. And the hero of the whole Bible is the bridegroom who comes to get his bride and fulfill covenant. And so marriage in this way is supremely important in all of culture. Marriage is actually a little microcosm of practicing covenant. A binding, deep relationship which brings you face to face, And so God is utterly above us, but it's actually it's strange to give you a bilateral intimacy. Okay, so covenant is at the center of the Bible. And if you go to all these other religious worldviews in their holy books, they don't operate toward covenant. Covenant as a relationship with God is very much a biblical idea. And it really only is in two religions. It's only in the religions of the Bible, in Christianity and Judaism, pretty much. Not even quite Islam. So in an earlier video, I talked about the different views of God, and only the Bible has this view of God with all these different attributes. And if you're looking for an omnipotent, almighty, omnipresent, personal God, you've pretty much already eliminated most of the world's religions. You're already down to 3. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. They all came out of the Bible. At least Islam, even Islam is supposed to come out. Obviously, Judaism and Christianity is built on the Bible. And the two religions built on the Bible, Christianity and Judaism, it's all dealing with covenant, okay? And all the other religions are not dealing with, you could say like Hinduism might have a God like Christian who wants to offer you a relationship, but he's not an omnipotent, Omnipresent God, the God of all, over all. He's just like one God in a pantheon, right? And that's a very different thing. One God over all, omnipotent, almighty, omnipresent, and personal. And that personal relationship is intended to become very intense and intimate and binding. And it's binding to God. That's the part that's really important. So the drama of the Bible, and this is what I wrote in that paper, the major views on God, is not just on whether you and I will get saved. The drama of the Bible is whether God will succeed in his relationship. There's an old theologian named Anselm, and Anselm's salvation is about the honor of God. That's what he puts it. Really what he's saying is whether God in his very being and nature and character will fail. If he doesn't win his people to himself and fulfill this relationship, this covenant, then God has failed. You realize that? Yes, he's failed. And that's the actual deep drama of the Bible. And so covenant is the way that God gets to that. So the drama of the Bible is, will God's promise of covenant with his people be fulfilled and come to completion? So if you're watching this video, that's one thing. People read the Bible. It's got 66 books, and they're not sure what it's about, and they know it's supposed to be a quote-unquote religious book. I want to give you the central story arc of the Bible. This is what it's really, really about. So if it tells you some piece of advice on how to handle your money or how to be nicer to your wife, you should follow it. It's probably going to be good and right. But that's not at the center of the Bible. The center of the Bible is God's deep, profound relationship, covenant. And it's one of the reasons I started this class with what kind of a God are you looking for? Don't you want a God that's personal and you can have a deep, unbreakable relationship with, and that relationship can never fail? Well, that's covenant. And just to close this out, thankfully, the great story arc of the Bible culminates in a tremendously important announcement, and that is what we call the gospel. The good news. The gospel is news, something that has been accomplished and not something that you're supposed to do. The gospel is not the grand law. It is the grand accomplishment of Christ, what God has done to fulfill the covenant through his son Jesus in his death and resurrection and the outpouring of the Holy Spirit to unite us to himself. And so I want to just kind of offer that to you. Meta-narrative and what the Bible is actually offering about God and the meaning of the world. And, maybe you're not interested in human beings need an eternal relationship with God that's utterly secure, that God has completed. But that is what the Bible is offering. And I want to offer that as an argument as to why you should consider the Bible as true. Nobody else has that kind of teaching. And it really is where the hope of all of human life rests, including your life.